Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Freedom Uncensored. And it's an exciting episode that I've got for you today. I've been sitting on some of this reflection and insight in obviously we're coming to the end of 2024 now. So a lot of conversations wrapping up with the business owners that I work with in the hair, beauty, and aesthetics industry, doing a bit of reflection and year in review, and me just sort of looking around and looking at data and really just trying to understand what happened this year. What were the trials and the tribulations? What were the mistakes? What were the oversights? What were the trending challenges that we found for clinic and salon owners in this industry? And then I'm going to follow this up with another YouTube episode on the things that I think you need to, my hit predictions for 2025, and what you need to be doing differently. And probably a lot of that content is coming for the lessons that I want to share with you today, or the things that you want to become more aware of, and potentially set yourself up in a way next year that doesn't make you so vulnerable to some of the challenges that you may or may not have experienced this year, but could potentially come back and challenge you next year. So, look, I think that obviously in tying up the end of a year, there's a lot of review that I do, definitely as a coach and a mentor in the industry. I have access to lots and lots and lots of data. So in my coaching program, I have coaching clients. We've got about 70 clients at the moment that are all completing weekly data, from sales to how many retail units they're selling, to their rebooking rates, to their client drop-offs, the whole lot. Like, we're constantly collecting data from our clients, and it's the same over in my marketing agency. We're looking at lead flow, we're looking at new client acquisition, we're monitoring what those new clients are actually doing, how they're booking, whether it's online or whether they're booking through ads, how they're showing up, whether they're cancelling, what the cancellation rates are. So I've got access to so much data. And it's so interesting because obviously I've been sharing some of this data online, and it's fascinating the responses that I've been getting. Like, I've got one post at the moment that I'm absolutely getting slammed for. I'm not gonna lie. But what do they say in celebrity world? Any attention is good attention, right? Look, and lucky I've got a little bit of a thick skin when it comes to people expressing themselves quite vigorously on my social media feeds, but I've been absolutely copping a flogging for my views on online booking, and people chipping in their 2 cents worth, telling me I'm dated and I don't know what I'm talking about, and online booking's the technology that you should be using, and I've got more new clients coming through online booking than ever before, and all of this stuff. So I want to talk to you about some of the insights that I've got, but also really give you an understanding that some of the content that I put out there, and some of the predictions, some of the trends, the way that I can sit here in front of you and say mistakes, is not based on, like, Sally from Oklahoma or wherever she was the other day. What, did you find this with one client and decide to make this post? Is what she said to me. I nearly fell over. No, I haven't just taken this data from one client. Got data and information and consultation and feedback from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients in this industry. And that's what makes me in a very, very unique position to be able to bring you content, trends, challenges, and up to the minute information that you need to be able to make good decisions in your salon or clinic, to either put yourself in a position where you're not going to experience some of that turmoil, or to, if you are experiencing some similar turmoils, to actually know what to do to fix it. So let's talk about the first kind of area or challenge or mistake, difficulty, whatever you want to call it, that I noticed particularly for this year. And obviously, when there are fluctuations in the market and the economy, things get a bit shaky. And I've always been a big believer that the economy or changes in, what's the word for it, disposable income and spending and all of that sort of stuff doesn't necessarily create new problems. It just highlights vulnerabilities in your business that were probably already there. I'm a big believer in that the economy didn't go and make all of your clients stretch their appointments, for example. The economy just highlighted a vulnerability in your business that was already existing around client commitment levels, for example, right? So let's talk about the stretch and skip phenomenon. Stretch and skip. I've actually got a name for it now, guys. Trending. But stretch and skip was the tendency for clients to start stretching appointments or skipping appointments altogether. Now, when we started questioning this type of behavior in the clients, definitely availability of funds and reduction in disposable cash flow was the predominant reason for these clients to be doing that. When I looked into that a little bit further, there was one common booking, what do you want to call it, methodology that I was finding that was creating stretch and skip more than other ways of clients booking. So, for example, when I looked at data, it was found that clients who tended to book online were much more at risk of stretching their appointments. And they've always been at that risk, because when you let a client just run their own race in terms of their own booking frequency, naturally, they don't book on time. They just don't. Like, they get busy, life happens, they forget. And then for whatever reason, I don't know, they might feel a hair on their chin and go, oh, I haven't had my chin wax. I better get that booked in, as opposed to booking every 4 weeks or whatever their booking regime is supposed to be. There's often a trigger event or a pain or an event, an upcoming something that they want to look good for, or there's often a trigger event that reminds them that they need to go and book, as opposed to them sticking to the recommended booking regime, which is always the downfall when it comes to online booking and allowing existing clients to really run their own race. And then obviously, in conjunction with that, they often miss it, will skip. They miss an appointment by the time they remember, or their next availability comes around to be able to book that appointment. Obviously, also when the decision is left up to the client, to book those appointments in, it's also going to be subject to the available funds that they've got. So if, let's say, their appointment rolled around on a non-pay week, well, what do you think they would do? They would probably say, well, I need to skip it and maybe look at booking the following week when my pay comes in. Or so the big challenge or mistake, if you want to call it, that salon and clinic owners really were challenged by was that online booking clients started to get a little bit more lax in their attendance. And part of that is because just the nature of online booking, they just forget and life gets busy, and we're busier than ever now. But also financially, often the booking, or when they were supposed to book, might have fallen on a week where they didn't have the available funds in the bank that they might have normally had, because incomes were starting to get a little bit stretched and there was less disposable income available, which meant that they started to stretch their appointments. And we did see some of that behavior even happening for the clients that were managed, that the therapist or the stylist was rebooking the appointments in advance. There was some restructuring of the service or the treatment plans to accommodate changes in budget. The thing that worked well for the clinics that had those structures in place was that they didn't, for the most part, end up losing clients altogether, which I found that clinics and salons that had big or higher frequencies of online booking definitely suffered from significant degrees of client loss, because they just sort of dropped off the face of the earth and didn't so much see the value of booking in their own time, or they just simply couldn't justify, their reduced access to disposable income being spent on hair, beauty, or skin services, right? So there's a couple of parts to that. One is the risky nature of running online booking and the fact that you just leave clients up to their own devices. Some of that is around them just deciding that it's not of value. Some of it's around stretching and skipping, and just being less frequent in their levels of commitment, as opposed to those that really are sort of mapped in or planned into a process or a structure, a treatment plan or a service plan, if you like, obviously demonstrate higher levels of commitment. And we found that those clients really did, they weren't as vulnerable to stretching and skipping and dropping off altogether as the online booking clients were. Which sort of leads nicely into my next mistake, was that in 2024, cancellations were huge. Now, you must have been living under a rock if you didn't feel the pinch of the cancellation tsunami that came with 2024, where we did have a much higher prevalence of cancellation rates in our appointment books. Why? You must wonder. Well, we can speculate, and I've definitely got some theories as to why people started cancelling, and some of it does relate to the shifts in the economy and the availability of disposable income. So, obviously, when all the cost of living went up and it got more difficult for people to preserve and protect their beauty and hair and their skin appointments, it became more difficult for them to be able to find a bulk amount of money to be able to honour that appointment, particularly in, say, colour services for hair and more invasive or more expensive skin treatments in the aesthetic industry. You know, some of those clients are having to find $400, $500, $600 in one go. And when the disposable income pinch happened, and then the time for the appointment would roll around, they would check their bank accounts and go, I don't have, just through not being used to having to manage their money more tightly, it was a situation where they didn't have the available funds in the bank account, but they never said that to you because they were a little bit embarrassed and they would cancel their appointments or reschedule that to a later time. So definitely the cost of living in combination with, you know, that having an impact on not having as disposable income meant that people weren't managing, or they were having difficulty in managing their cash flow and then preserving the money that they would normally have pretty easily sitting in their bank account. When that become really pinched, they were getting to the appointment date and then realizing that they would have to cancel that appointment. So, you know, the salons and clinics that were at higher risk of the cancellations were those that were more engaged in rebooking clients. Obviously, as I mentioned, also clients that were used to booking online. And I suppose clients that booked online with a little bit time left, maybe a week out or 2 weeks out. A lot of online booking is last minute, so they're not as vulnerable to cancellation, but it still does happen. You know, the other side of online booking can be that they might have missed an appointment or they might have stretched an appointment, but they book in when they do have the money. So sometimes they're not as what's the word, at risk at cancellation as, say, somebody that has been rebooked. But I want to differentiate between someone that's been rebooked versus somebody that has been treatment planned or service planned, because I call the rebook people swingers. They just swing from an appointment to an appointment, right? And the trouble with that is that the commitment's lower. So when you're swinging from an appointment to appointment and then there's a dip in your cash flow, it's quite easy to cancel at the last minute and end up in a situation where you actually can't afford your appointment. So there are a lot of clinics out there that were suffering waves of last minute cancellation with real no backup plan of how to backfill these appointments. And commonly it was salons and clinics that had just the tendency to rebook clients as opposed to service plan them. And again, like I said, the reason why is because rebooked clients are less committed than those that are serviced or treatment planned. So they just found it easier to cancel those appointments. The other thing too is that salons and clinics that did have clients in service plans that might have been on a subscription, obviously, if someone's financial circumstances change and there's a situation where there's less available disposable income and that person's in a subscription, then it's required conversations around budget to come into play. So, that allowed those salons and clinic owners to possibly make alterations or customizations to the plans to make sure that the client could continue to attend their appointments, but maybe on a stricter budget or level of investment, rather than just drop off altogether, which is what we found with the rebookers. It was like, can't afford it, late cancel, and then it was very difficult to re-engage them back into their appointments compared to the ones that were service and treatment planned. So treatment planning, if you weren't doing that in 2024, it's likely that you really did suffer a higher prevalence of cancellation, plus the skip and stretch phenomenon was probably something that was more profound in your business because you didn't have that commitment structure of the service and treatment planning in place. So that was a big lesson for 2024 for a lot of the salons and the clinics that I was working with. It was a really interesting time for well-established businesses. And when I say well-established business, my definition of that would probably be salons and clinics that probably haven't had to rely on marketing a whole lot. They've got some good organic traction of new clients coming in, word of mouth, referrals, that type of thing. They've never really had to invest a lot of money into marketing. They might have some basic marketing in place, but not a whole lot. So they were a well-established business often grows organically, as opposed to through marketing efforts and strategy and all of that kind of thing. So there are a lot of businesses sitting pretty, if you like, that found 2024 to be very, very destabilizing. So once these clinics and salons that were once very used to a nice organic flow of foot traffic coming through, it dried up and they panicked. They started seeing obviously some of their existing clientele dropping off for obviously budget, economy, lower disposable income reasons, and then their organic flow started to dry up of new clients coming through, and they didn't really have marketing structures in place to be able to bolster and weather that. So there are a lot of well-established businesses that actually started going backwards in 2024. It was really interesting to me. I judge for the ABIA Awards, so the Australian Beauty Industry Awards, and I get exposure to a lot of businesses, their numbers, their progress, and I've done that for a few years now. And what are the trends? Now, these businesses are typically the top echelons in the industry. They're typically businesses that are doing extremely well. Prior to this year, in all honesty, often when I would judge these applications, I would always see amazing increases in revenue and average dollar sales and retailing, and you'd always see in the best performing applications really big jumps in performance when they're showing me their year of performance in trying to vie for the winning application. I've got to say, I did not see that in this year's applications. It was a very thinly observed increases in revenue, increases in profitability, increases in business performance were very few and far between. And if there was evidence of increase, it was like this much. And it's the first year ever that I've noticed that trend in some of the top salons and clinics in Australia. So it wasn't just my clients that I was looking around and going, oh, this is really interesting. It was the industry leaders were also, and again, most of them are very well established. Most of them have got really solid business structures, operations. They're meant to be they are the echelons or the top of the industry. But, a lot of them are really well-established businesses, and it could possibly be due to, relying on good solid foundations, where there's nothing wrong with that. Once you get to a certain level of business, it might be that you don't have to market as hard for new clients, or it might be that, you know, your retention's really good because you've got a really good existing clientele pool. But as I said, when the pinch happened and the existing clients started to drop off, and then the new client acquisition was not as aggressive because these businesses haven't needed to, nor had they needed to sort of aggressively pursue influxes of new clientele, that meant that the growth was either stagnant, backwards, or very minimal. And I saw that across the board. People, more established businesses were coming to me for help in terms of business growth. And then obviously, let's say we use the trends of the ABIA applications, very well-known businesses that I've been judging for years didn't show as much increase as they had previously. And I do honestly believe that it's because possibly there was not enough adaptation or innovation in the way that they do things to be able to weather the storm and maintain that growth, right? So, you know, it got shaky even for the most established, well-oiled businesses, that's for sure. And I think it was a case of not necessarily innovating as quick as they needed to, and also resting on their laurels a bit in terms of, well, we're pretty successful. What we've done has worked to here, not realizing that you do really need to pivot and adjust your business according to the economy and the market fluctuations and, you know, what your clientele are doing or not doing to make sure that you can still get a trajectory, I can never say this bloody word, trajectory of growth happening in your business year in, year out. The other thing that was super noticeable in, you know, if you want to call it a mistake or an error or definitely a difficulty of the average salon and clinic owner this year was the emergence of scarcity mindset. Man, and it's funny because, and again, when you're used to a stable cash flow, a stable clientele, and then all of a sudden you start to experience a decline in client numbers, a decline in spending, a decline in, you know, everything to do with your business, if anything's going to panic you, it's probably going to be that. You know, so what I actually start to see really emerge out of, you know, business owners that might have been fairly stable or fairly even keeled or feel fairly well balanced when it came to business was this emergence of scarcity and panic. You know, oh my gosh, you know, I'm losing clients. This is really bad. You know, you would see more competitiveness in the market space around pricing and, you know, people doing things that they wouldn't normally do in their marketing regimes to try and outrun the reduction in client numbers that they were seeing. But interestingly, when you went into the salon industry groups, there was just this common thread of, you know, oh, is anyone else quiet? And this is getting really bad. And, you know, this is getting really unsustainable. And the mindset of people was complete panic and lack and overwhelm. And, you know, because they weren't used to experiencing decline, they weren't equipped and they weren't innovating to be able to manage the shifting and changing dynamics of the economy and obviously the flow through to that on their businesses. And then obviously the first thing that bottoms out as a result of that is the mindset, the panic, the, oh no, there's not enough, the lack, you know, people who might have been, you know, abundant and pretty stable in their financial experience, you know, when that starts to be shattered or shaky or unstable, you definitely see what people are made of in terms of mindset and the way that they see things. And I saw lots of scarcity and lack and fear creeping to the surface when it come to looking at the flavour of the industry groups and what was being spoken about, you know, experiences at the beauty expo, all of those things. The feedback that I was getting from people was not one of calm and, you know, this too shall pass. It was very much a case of, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? This is the first time ever potentially that we've had a decline, or, you know, what seems to be happening. There was definitely an air of overwhelm going on and scarcity and mindset that was quite unprecedented, in my opinion, when I started looking around the industry. So, what do we do about all of this? I am going to be releasing a part 2 to this YouTube episode, which is my hit predictions of 2025 and everything that I think you should be doing. If you've suffered some of the fate that I've explained or made some of the mistakes that I've mentioned in this YouTube video in 2024, you don't want to be doing the same thing in 2025. So I'd strongly encourage you to catch the next episode where I'm going to be exposing the hit predictions in 2025, but I will speak to some of the areas that I think, generally I think that people need to start thinking about in light of the mistakes that I've shared with you today. This is where I think you need to start focusing your attention in your business. If I've explained anything today that's hit a nerve with you, there are some things that you can obviously start doing now to manage some of these fluctuations in your clientele, your revenue numbers, your profitability, and all of those business performance metrics. So this is what I would be focusing on. I would really start to focus on the elimination of online booking for existing clients. Now, I'll go into strategy in the next YouTube, but what I found in 2024 was online booking for existing clients was a massive liability. So you want to start thinking about, well, what can I do differently in my business to reduce the liability of online booking or the prevalence of online booking when it comes to my existing clientele? I'm not saying don't let your new clients book. Calm down, Sally from Oklahoma, who slammed me on social media. But I'm really talking about the fact that customer service and getting people booked well in advance for their appointments is really the way to go. And like I said, I'm going to talk about the hit predictions or the trends or the things that I think you need to be doing in 2025 in a lot more depth in the next YouTube video. But for now, I just want you to think about online booking. You might want to go in and check your own data, right? So if you look at comparison data, there's a couple of ways that you can look at this in terms of, particularly for your clients that tend to online book. 2 years ago, what was their frequency of attendance compared to now? And are there differences in between your online booking clientele versus your clientele that book before they leave? Just start looking at your data. Just start checking whether this is a risk or a relevant liability for you and your business. That's all you could do. And that's what I've said to a lot of people throwing shade at my posts on my social media. I've just said, look, it's just something to think about. Just go and check your numbers and see whether it applies, because I haven't pulled this stuff out of thin air. I've pulled it off lots of data and lots of analysis of hundreds of salon and clinic owners across the industry. It may or may not relate to you, but go and check, right? Check your data, analyze your data. You should always be looking for trends, because in data lies clues. There might be things that you need to change or do differently. There might be structures that are no longer serving you anymore, that require a tweak or a refinement. Data can tell you absolutely everything. The other area of focus that I think that you should start looking at, based on the mistakes that I've shared with you today, is really moving clients towards a subscription style planning structure when it comes to their appointment commitment. So those treatments and those service plans being the model, being the way that you deal with all of your clients. And then obviously there needs to be, your ability to really increase levels of commitment from your clients to be able to make that subscription style commitment a reality for them. And I'll cover that in my next YouTube in terms of mapping out some of the strategies for increasing client commitment in that regard. But subscription style treatment and service planning, if you've suffered cancellation tsunamis and lots of clients dropping off, that's where I reckon you need to focus your attention. All businesses and all business owners need to have a skill in bringing new clients through the front door, right? It's how you protect yourself from economic fluctuations, from downturns, from tightening of client spending, to loss of clients. If you don't know how to bring in new business, you need to figure it out, right? One of the most powerful skill sets of a business owner is to know how to bring new business into their business. It's a formula or a recipe for growth. Obviously, so is retention, but as a business owner, you need to be skilled enough to know how to bring new clients into your business. And if you have not had that skill set refined, and that's been a vulnerability for you in 2024 that's bit you on the butt, you need to focus your 2025 on really refining that skill. It will absolutely pay off in spades when you suffer those fluctuations in spending and client numbers, that you know how to actually bring new clients into your business. And then the third area of focus that I'd really encourage a lot of you to think about today, as a result of the mistakes and the trends that we've been seeing in 2024, is to really recognize the link between your own psychology. I spoke about this in the context of scarcity. The way that you think and the way that you react and the way that you cope with what's happening in your business has a direct correlation to how successful your business is. And I don't care what you say about that or what your theories on business success is, but your psychology is the main predictor of whether your business is going to be successful or not. So if your psychology has got the better of you in 2024, so let's say you've been in overwhelm, you've been in burnout, you've been in panic mode, you've just really struggled with the pressures and the responsibility of business, it's time to focus your attention on you as being the main thing that you need to be tweaking and refining and working on to be able to access your next level of success in business. You're the common denominator in all of those situations, whether it's your leadership, whether it's your finances or your financial literacy. You're the person that's responsible for coordinating all of the things in your business to be able to create profit, cash flow, increases in client numbers, sales, market, whatever it is that you're doing in your business. So if you're not right from a psychological perspective, how do you think the business is going to function when you're operating with not all wheels, on the ground and as powered up as they should be? So really understanding that, if 2024 done a number on your mental state, that coming into 2025 and really prioritizing you and your own development and your own performance psychology really needs to be the way to go to be able to stabilize your business. Super, super important. So part 2's coming. I'm going to really crack into some more strategies around hit predictions for 2025 and what you need to be doing differently to end up with a business that actually grows in profit and revenue in 2025, as opposed to staying stagnant or going backwards. Okay, and I think the real message that I want to get across from today's episode is you can't do business the same anymore. Right? The shit that used to work even 2 years ago don't work no more, right? There's fundamentals of business that will always stay the same. That, obviously the way that you show up in the business, your financial literacy, how you manage your finances, there's some petty basics of business that need to be in play that, obviously won't need a complete overhaul. But they do need levels of innovation. They do need to be tweaked. You do need to up-level yourself as well as your business operations and your strategy and the way that you're doing things according to fluctuations in the market and what is happening at any given time. There's always something happening at any point in time, at any stage of business, and also whatever year it is. It's not just that we're in an economic sort of shit show right now that you go, oh, well, I better innovate now. Innovation always needs to be part of the business strategy. It's not even just that now we've got AI or now we've got the next thing coming is when you start to innovate. Innovation, adaptation, and customization to the market should always be on the agenda. It's businesses that just refuse to bend and stretch and be responsive to what's going on around them. They're the ones that fold. And we've seen that time and time again. The businesses that go under and the businesses that aren't around or that end up, collapsing or not being around anymore are mostly the ones that haven't innovated, right? They haven't been responsive to the market. And you know what? The market's the boss. So I'd love to know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts on 2024 have been, what you found, if you can relate or resonate to anything that I've shared with you today. I'd love to even know what your common mistake or your biggest mistake, you might even just be realizing it from the episode today. That recognition that you've made a boo-boo and that 2025 really needs to be different in XYZ. So I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you for part 2, which is my hit predictions for 2025 and all the strategy and what you need to be doing different to have a bumpy year.